Coming. Good evening. Good evening, students. Good evening, guys. Good evening, Kavita. Good evening. Everything all right? Good evening, Naveed. Good evening. Sheshagri, good evening. Good evening, guys. Very good evening. There is a camera, and here we see. So normally, most of the time we see the teachers or anyone, they just teach here, considering that here are the children, but actually children are there. No. So, good evening, guys. Good evening. Good evening, Parmeshwar. Good evening, Naveed. Good evening, Amritanand. Today you have written a nice name. Your own name, Sajid. Good evening. It is better. It is better. It looked like a name of a doctor. Right, and that was looking like a DJ, name of a DJ, name of a gamer, online gamer. I'm not saying that is bad, but when we have a different target, we have to start living like that. Discover that medico within you. No, you are already a medical, you are already into the process. Right, it is just a part of it. You are already joined the medical course. This is just, we are seeing that whether you are up to the mark or we have one way, because we have limited seats and many contenders. So to give the justice, this test is done. Those who go to Russia for MBBS, so they join MBBS. In first year, they are not taught anything. They are just taught the Russian language. You understand? So still they have joined the medical, so that is a part, because in Russia, everything is their language. So they welcome Indian students, but they don't have any English college. One or two English colleges are there, but they are very, I don't think so they are at all famous. Okay, it's your brother account. Okay, bachcho, good evening, Jhanvi, good evening, Sheshagri, Parmeshwar, and Kavita. Okay, tell me, what was that thing that we are doing? So I think muscles we were doing, muscles, tell me. This class is mainly to complete that portion, because in the examination that is also coming. Muscles, bolo beta, MK. Yes. Okay. Muscles are, we have three type of muscles, no? Three type. And how do we name them? We name them those who are attached to the skeleton. They are called skeletal. Those who are attached to the visceral organ, they are called visceral. And the third one are cardiac. Cardiac don't have any problem, because we have only one name for them, cardiac, because they make the wall of the heart. We have skeletal and visceral muscles. The name of the muscles, skeletal, visceral, and cardiac muscles. Muscles are mesodermal tissues. In terms of the weight, maximum weight, if you take out all the tissues, epithelial tissue you keep in one place, take the weight of it, all connective, including your bones, cartilage, blood, everything, you keep it in one place, weight, take the weight of it, and take your muscles, put it in one weighing machine and take the weight of it, and nervous tissue, take the weight of it. Muscles are most heavy in terms of the body weight. Muscular tissue is the most abundant that we need to know. So skeletal, visceral, I told you to make you some conceptual learning. What is a skeleton? Anyone who can define a skeleton? What is a skeleton? Skeleton. What is a skeleton? Tell me, who can tell me? Skeleton क्या होता है? If I don't have a skeleton, what will happen? Framework, that support, yes, makes sense, good. Framework of the body, yeah, framework. Framework means you are saying the one that gives shape. Ah, correct. Structure that support and shape. Very good, very good. So guys know the meaning of the skeleton, the structure that provides shape and support to the body. Shape and support. So in terms of shape, what's the shape of my nose? That is determined by the bone, nasal bone and the cartilage. Nasal cartilage, right? Shape of my pinna depend on the cartilage. My body height, my width of the head, the shape of the head, complete skeleton, all decided by the skeleton, the endoskeleton within me, right? If you take out all the skeleton, I'll be lying down like a bed sheet. No, not like a bed sheet. I have enough of muscles, like a mattress. But there won't be any shape. You just take out all the skeleton from me. Then the next word is support. Support is like I'm doing, but my brain is not injured because my skeleton it supports my brain. The vertebral column, such a delicate organ, which is supported by the supports our, we call that spinal cord. So brain is supported by cranium, the brain, and vertebral column supports the spinal cord, which is very, very delicate organ. It's all very delicate. Similarly, if you just punch here, but don't injure my kidneys directly, because upper part of these ribs are, supporting that. So a lot of support you can see that, these bones provide to the delicate structure. So skeleton, we have an endoskeleton, and our endoskeleton is made up of bones and cartilage. Remember that in the fetal life, only cartilage, but after that, bones and cartilage. So beta, muscles which are attached to the skeleton are skeletal muscles. Now the next word is viscera. Now tell me, visceral. Visceral means related to viscera. It means pertaining to viscera. So what is a viscera? Anyone, what is viscera? Where is the viscera in the body? Viscera क्या होता है? Viscera. Smooth muscles, viscera. What is SH? Where is the viscera? What is viscera in my body? You have postmortem. In the postmortem, doctors take out entire viscera, put it in a sealed bag and send it for examination. And the report comes that whether the person has eaten something, the person has some alcohol in the stomach, or might be, I'm giving you a hint, some alcohol in the stomach, or there is some poisoning or something happened, right? So that is viscera. I'm giving you a hint. So all these soft organs in the body cavity, include the viscera. All these soft organs. So viscera means the soft organs of the body cavity. The soft organs in body cavity, in the body cavities, right? So one thoracic cavity, in the thoracic cavity, soft organs are lungs, heart. It includes, this is viscera, the major blood vessels, all viscera, right? Now come to the abdominal cavity. You have so many visceral organs. Liver is part of viscera. Complete alimentary canal, intestine, small, everything. It is viscera. Then spleen, one spleen we have, then other glands are there. For example, we have the pancreas here, we have the kidneys here, suprarenal glands are here, gonads are here. All that is viscera. All the soft organs of the body cavity is called viscera, and the muscles which form the wall of the viscera. There are there are some hollow organs, for example, stomach, intestine, all these, alimentary canal. It is a hollow organ. Then that urinary bladder is a hollow organ. Then blood vessels are there, their wall. In these visceral organs, we have the muscles which are present in these visceral organs, the hollow organs in the body cavity, like urinary bladder, like the intestines, like stomach, right, esophagus. Here, the wall is made up of smooth muscles. Those muscles are called, smooth muscle or visceral muscle. I'll tell you why they are called smooth, but then right now we are calling them visceral. We are calling them visceral. That's why I'm telling you why we are calling them visceral, because they form the wall of the viscera. Why we are calling them skeletal? Because they are attached to the skeleton. And why we are calling them cardiac? Because they form the wall of the heart. They don't have any problem, but here we have multiple names. For example, when we see the skeletal muscle fiber, we find skeletal muscles, we find that there are dark and light bands in this muscle. There are dark and light bands, okay? So skeletal muscle fibers are arranged in such a way that you can clearly see dark and light bands. So stripes are there, these type of stripes are there, and therefore these muscles can be called as striped or striated. So because we see such type of striations, we call them striated muscle. Striated muscle. So that is another name of the skeletal muscle. We call them striated muscle. Right. Now these muscles are innervated by somatic neural system. The muscles, striated one or skeletal one, they are innervated by somatic neural system, the voluntary nervous system. Therefore, we can also call these muscles as voluntary muscles. We can call them as voluntary muscles, aka voluntary muscles. Right, coming to these muscles, how the fibers are. Fibers don't have any striations. There are no stripe, no dark and light bands. So what we can call them? We can call them smooth muscles. AKA, they are called smooth muscles. They are called smooth muscles, right? So visceral muscles can be called smooth muscles. Are you guys getting my point? Okay, so visceral muscles can be called smooth muscles, and they are innervated by autonomic nervous system. All the visceral muscles are innervated by autonomic nerves, autonomic sympathetic fibers or parasympathetic fibers. Therefore, we can call these as the involuntary. We can call them as involuntary muscles. So we have three names: skeletal, striated, voluntary. Muscles all same. Similarly, visceral, smooth, and involuntary muscles all meaning same. Cardiac don't have any other name. Thankfully, cardiac has only but then cardiac muscle fibers. But to cardiac muscle fibers, if you see the cardiac muscle fiber, you also see in the cardiac muscle striations. Yes, you see in the cardiac muscle striations. So we can say that cardiac muscle fibers, they look like skeletal. They look like skeletal. Why? Because they also have striations. And because we cannot control our heart. So they behave like, or they work like visceral because they are involuntary. So they look like skeletal because of the striations, and they work like visceral because it is also involuntary. But we don't have we don't call them involuntary muscle because involuntary muscle is already registered by visceral muscles. So don't start calling the cardiac because you say that, sir, they are also involuntary. We can go, no. Involuntary muscle is a name registered by a muscle. Cardiac muscles don't have any other name, so they are simply called cardiac muscles. Yes, they appear like the skeletal because of the striations and they work like. So this is conceptual thing that I wanted to inculcate in your minds thoroughly. Rest of the things so you also can read by yourself. But the concepts I can tell you. Now, when you see the skeletal muscle fibers, when you see the skeletal muscle fibers, you will find that in one muscle fiber there are more than one nuclei, right? Now, this condition is called syncytial condition, syncytium, okay? Or this is a multinucleate condition, the fiber with many nuclei in one cell. Here there is no problem. In one cell, only one nucleus. Here also there is no problem. In one cell, there is one nucleus, right? But here there is a problem that in one cell, there are more than one nucleus, right? In one cell, there are more than one nuclei. This condition is known as syncytial condition. Syn means fused, cytial. Syncytial condition, syncytial conditions. These fibers can be called syncytial fibers. Skeletal muscle fibers called syncytial because there are many nuclei in one cell. Now, why we are calling them this word? Try to understand, try to know the meaning of the word syn and cyto. Now, syn already you know it means fused. Cyto, you know, cyto means cell. Syn means fused. Cyto means cell. Now, very, very carefully listen this point. For example, right, like suppose if we have many cells, okay, many muscle cells, okay, we have many muscle cells, okay. So let's see, I'll put the septum. Septum means the partition, okay. So how many cells do you see here? How many cells do you see? How many muscle cells do you see here? I'm talking about these are skeletal muscle. I'm just saying that, yes, they are five. But you know what happens? In skeletal muscles, very good, but in skeletal muscles, these cells start getting fused. The septum start getting lost. Chudu, you can see when the septum between them start getting lost. So you can see that now the cells are becoming one. Now this is the way, now you have one big cell containing 5 nuclei. Now you have one big cell, fiber-like cell containing 5 nuclei because their septa are lost. I hope you understand. Okay, now you know that there are actually 5 cells, but what we have done, we have like fused. The cells got fused. And this is good for the muscular tissue because now what happens that a single nerve impulse, and then you will find that this entire thing contracts like one unit. Now this entire thing contracts like one unit. So it is very good for the muscular tissue. It is good that, cells have fused together. This condition is called syncytial condition, or this is called syncytium. Cyto means cell, syn means fused. Syn means fused and cyto means cells. The cells are fused. So yes, they are multinucleated and actually we can call them syncytial. Okay, we can call them syncytial or multinucleated, right? So this word is already there, multinucleated or syncytial or syncytial because of the fusion of the cell, and this is good for the muscular tissue. So out of the 3, only muscle cell with multiple nuclei, more than one nucleus, muscle fiber with more than one nucleus is the skeletal muscle. Out of the 3, the one which is a branched one, do you know? I have drawn 2-3 times a diagram which is I've shown the branching. Did you catch it? And many of you already know, I know that you are smart. Tell me, out of the three, which muscle fiber is a branched one? Yes, you are right. You are right, Amritanand. Yes. At least some more people. You know that I don't want to get entire thing typed. Even if you say CA or CAR, I can understand that. So you can save time in typing. Cardiac muscle fibers, these are the branched fibers, only muscle fibers with branching. These are the branched fibers, okay? Out of the three, in which muscle we have the intercalated discs? Out of the three, like what is the intercalated disc actually is? Okay, let's try to understand the concept here. Intercalated disc, I am explaining you intercalated disc. For example, like you have the junction of one cell, one cardiac muscle cell and the other cardiac muscle cell, and this is a junction. Now at this junction, some complex formation can take place. And what that complex formation, some fusion points have been formed, okay? So there are some fusion points, okay? There are some fusion points. As you can see that some fusion points have been shown here. So this is fused here and then this is fused here, okay? So there are two fusion points, okay? There are two fusion points. These are called intercalated discs. Intercalated discs. At these intercalated discs, there are some gap junctions. At these intercalated discs, there are some gap junctions. So you can find the gap junctions in intercalated discs. And this is a specialty of the cardiac muscle fiber, gap junctions, which maintain cytoplasmic continuity. For example, in between the two cardiac muscle cells, there are gap junctions. That means the cytoplasm of both the cells is continuous. Similarly, this one continuous with the other one, this one is continuous with the other one, as if all these cells, they are actually fused like one unit, isn't it? All these cells, they are actually fused, they are actually one, they actually form a syncytium. But this is not a structural syncytium. It is not a structural syncytium, but they work like a syncytium. How? Let me explain you. If a nerve impulse comes to one muscle fiber, all the remaining muscle fiber also contract. Right? The moment as a node, the pacemaker fires, both the atria go into systole, contract. Actually, we have separated the ventricle from a fibrous septum. Otherwise, the ventricle also contract the moment. So this is the advantage of a syncytium, where the cytoplasm of the cells are continuous, right? So they all behave like one unit, a single unit. I can say that in cardiac muscle fiber, I am having a functional syncytium, right? Because this cell is fused with the nearby one is fused with the nearby one. So as if, all are continuous, I can say there is a functional they are functionally syncytial. They are functionally syncytial, and they are structurally syncytial. They are structurally syncytial. Actually, you see multiple nuclei on one side. You see that cells are fused. Here you don't see them fused. But because at the intercalated discs, There are gap junctions because at intercalated disc there are gap junctions, and because of those gap junctions there is a cytoplasmic continuity. All the cytoplasm of all the muscle fiber of the cardiac muscle tissue, this become one as a cytoplasmic continuum, one unit. Okay, therefore they behave like one unit. Both the atria, there is no lag between right atrium and the left atrium. Both the atrium contract like one unit, bacho. Okay, so just remember this word, they are functionally syncytial. When you go to a medical college and say these words to your teachers will really hug you. The teachers will really love you, that really you have come here with such a good understanding of the biology. So branch muscle fibers are cardiac. Okay, smooth muscle fibers are they are unbranched, and similarly. Now, the shape of the cell of skeletal cylindrical. They are cylindrical. The shape of the cell of the cardiac also cylindrical. But the shape of the cell of the smooth muscle fiber, do you know what is the shape of the cell of the smooth muscle fiber? Shape of the cell of the smooth muscle fiber, what we call it, that ends are tapered. You can see the tapering ends. Yes, this shape is called fusiform. Very good. This shape is called fusiform or spindle shaped. Fusiform or spindle shaped, because the ends are tapered. It is not the fiber is not a cylindrical one. The ends are tapered. This is called fusiform. So these are the three type of muscle tissues in our body, and these are the special qualities of this muscle tissue. And they may ask you which one is a multinucleated cell, skeletal muscle fiber, and they may ask you in which muscle tissue you will find intercalated discs. You will say cardiac muscle fiber. Okay, and they may also ask you by what junctional complexes the cells of muscle tissue are bound together. By what junctional complexes the cells of the muscle tissue in general, all the muscle, whether skeletal, visceral or cardiac, because, like, for example, I am lifting a weight of 20 kilograms. That means such a force is generated by my, muscle fiber, by my biceps muscle fiber, the flexor of my elbow. Now imagine that at any point, if my tendon is weak, I cannot, because the tendon breaks. If the muscle fibers, they disintegrate, the two fibers break from between, then also. So what happens that all the fibers are actually, they're bound with some complexes, junctional complexes. You know what those junctions are between all of them. I'll tell you what those junctions are. Anyone want to try it? By the time I am writing, anyone want to try what those junctions, what is the name of the cementing junction? What we call the junction which provides cementing junctions. We have not taught you any special name here. Our NCERT call them, yes, our NCERT call them adhering junctions. Yes. So adhering junctions present. Here also, adhering junctions present. And here also, adhering junctions present. So don't misunderstand that junctions are only in one. No, adhering junctions are present in all three. But along with the adhering junctions, gap junctions are also present. And these gap junctions are only in the cardiac muscle and not in the other two. Out of the three, which one is resistant to or immune to fatigue? Out of the three, cell junctions hold them together and bundled in a connective tissue sheath, meaning in smooth muscles. Okay, very good. I'll tell you. Very good, Srinivas. Just answer my question. I asked the question, out of the three, which one is resistant to fatigue? Which one is immune to fatigue? Yes, this is immune to fatigue. This one is immune to fatigue. Immune to fatigue. Yes. Very good line. Someone has copied. You can all read the line. Kanithi Srinivas has written, cell junctions hold them together. I already told that junctions hold the cells together and bundled in a connective tissue sheath, meaning in smooth muscles. Yes. But whether it is skeletal or visceral or cardiac muscle, the fibers, all the fibers are bundled and then they are surrounded by a sheath. Now the word sheath means a cover. The word sheath means a cover. Cover. The word is sheath, sheath, and all the muscle fibers are inside. Okay. For example, in the skeletal muscle, we still have more fascicles inside. Fascicles, the bundles called fascicles. These are the bundles of the cell, individual cell called fascicle. So all of them are actually surrounded, all of them actually surrounded by a sheath, connective tissue sheath, and this sheath is known as fascia. Fascia. So in all the muscle, whether they are skeletal muscle or they are smooth muscles, in the smooth muscle also there is a fascia present, in the cardiac muscle also fascia present. The fibers are not open as such. The fibers are, the bundle of fibers are surrounded by a sheath of connective tissue. This is a white fibrous connective tissue sheath, and that is known as fascia. It is made up of white fibrous connective tissue. It is made up of white fibrous connective tissue. I hope that makes sense. Okay, understood? Cell junctions, okay, and the cell junctions, they hold these cells together so that they don't disintegrate, they don't separate apart, they remain they remain as one, right? So I hope you understand that line. And but so any other thing in the muscle that you have any problem in understanding the muscle tissue, any other point in the muscle tissue? Tell me, beta. Meanwhile, I will open that NCERT book also, so that you will be sure about, yes. Okay. Here we go. This class is mainly for these two parts which students have problem. Muscle tissue. Each muscle is made up of many long cylindrical fibers. Muscle cells are called muscle fibers because they are long, arranged in a parallel arrays. These fibers are composed of numerous fine fibrils called myofibrils. Just learn this line. Numerous fine fibrils called myofibrils. So fibrils. Inside the fiber we have fibrils. Okay. So fiber has fibrils. Muscle fibers contract means shorten in response to stimulation, then relax means again lengthen and return to their uncontracted state in a coordinated fashion. Their actions move the body to adjust to the changes in the environment and to maintain the position of the various parts of the body. In general, muscle plays an active role in all the movements of the body. Muscles are of three types: skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. They may ask this line: muscle fibers are composed of numerous fine fibrils. We just call them myofibrils. Skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle tissue is closely attached to skeletal bones. In a typical muscle, such as the bicep, striated or striped skeletal muscle fibers are bundled together. See, again, whenever we are using the word fibers, fibers means muscle cells, muscle fiber. Striated skeletal muscle fibers are bundled together in a parallel fashion, a sheath of tough connective tissue. I said now white fibrous connective tissue. Tough connective tissue enclose several bundles of muscle fibers. Tough connective tissue enclose several bundles of muscle fibers. One bundle. All these bundles are surrounded by a tough connective tissue sheath. And I told you the name of that is fascia. We will learn more about this in chapter 20, skeletal, movement and locomotion. The smooth muscle fibers taper at both ends. The cells are fusiform and do not show striations. Therefore, we call them smooth. Cell junctions hold them together and they are bundled together in a connective tissue sheath. All the muscles, they are bundled together in a connective tissue sheath. The wall of internal organs such as blood vessels, stomach, intestine contain this type of muscle tissue. Smooth muscles are involuntary as their functioning cannot be directly controlled. We usually are not able to make it contract merely by thinking about it as we do with the skeletal muscles. Right? So they are involuntary because they are innervated by the autonomic nervous system. Cardiac muscle tissue is a contractile tissue present only in the heart. Cell junctions fuse the plasma membrane of cardiac muscle cells and make them stick together. Cell junctions fuse the plasma membrane of the cardiac muscle cells and make them stick together. Communication junctions, these are the gap junctions. Communication junctions present at the intercalated disc. At some fusion points, allow the cells to contract as one unit. That is, when one cell receives a signal to contract, its neighbors, the neighboring cell, are also stimulated to contract. That is what I call it a functionally syncytial tissue. When the SA node fires, the pacemaker fires. Both the atria, right and left, their fibers, muscle fibers contract like one unit. This is a specialty of the cardiac because they have communication junctions present at the intercalated disc. These are those fusion points. These are some fusion points already. I have drawn the diagram and explained to you. The neural tissue. The neural tissue exerts the greatest control over the body's responsiveness to changing conditions. Neurons, which are the unit of neural system, are excitable cells. So please understand that the neural tissue is made up of two types of cells, neurons and neuroglial cells. If we think that the glial cells are very few or they are just merely some, no. The neuroglial cells, they make roughly or little more than 50% of the neural tissue. In terms of volume, the glial cells are more than 50% of the neural tissue. Where are those glial cells? What are those neuroglial cells? Yes, we know something about them. We know their name. They are the Schwann cells. In the peripheral nervous system, they are the Schwann cells. In the central nervous system, oligodendrocytes. They are the astrocytes, right? They are the, microglial cells, the phagocytic cells, microglial cells. All these are other than the neurons. These are called neuroglial cells. Their volume is more than 50% of the whole volume of the neural tissue, but they are not excitable cell. Excitable cells in the body are only the neurons and the muscle cells. Please understand that no, neurons are they are not the only excitable cell. Even the muscle cells are also excitable cells. Excitability. Excitability means that if a stimulus is there, they get depolarized. The polarity becomes reversed, ulta. Right? If the positive charge is outside the membrane, if a stimulus is there, if inside of the cell become positive and outside become negative, if the stimulus change the charge, we can say that the stimulus has excited the muscle fiber. The stimulus has excited the nerve fiber. This is this property called excitability. But glial cells are not excitable cells, right? They just protect and support the nerve cells. The neurons, the nerve cells, they are the unit of neural system. They are the excitable cells. You can see this one. The neuroglial cells, which constitute the rest of the neural system, protect and support neurons. Neuroglia makes up more than one half, that means 50%, the volume of the neural tissue in our body. When a neuron is suitably stimulated, an electrical disturbance is generated which swiftly travel along its plasma membrane, right? So the action potential, which here it is called disturbance, electrical disturbance. You can write the name of this electrical disturbance, bachcho, because you will hear this word so many times. This is known as this electrical disturbance. This is known as action potential. And we are calling it action potential. Why action? Because it is running, it is in action. Electrical disturbance is generated, and this is known as action potential. Action potential. Or simply, you can call it as nerve impulse. Please write down nerve impulse, action potential, or the nerve impulse. This electrical disturbance, which is generated when the neuron is suitably stimulated. Suitably means the stimulus should be of a particular minimum particular strength. It should be of a minimum strength. If it is stimulated by that stimulus, right, then an electrical disturbance is generated which swiftly travel along the plasma membrane, of the cell. Arrival of the disturbance at the neuron's ending or output zone triggers events that may cause stimulation or inhibition of the adjacent neurons and other cells. So all these things will be taught in the nervous tissue. Just understand that these are the different parts of the nerve cell. There is a cell body and so many projections out of the cell body. So many projections. These are protoplasmic projections. You can see these are the protoplasmic projections. Protoplasmic outgrowths projections. The cell has many protoplasmic projections. The longest one is known as axon. The axon is protected by a neuroglial cell called Schwann cell. This is the main cell body and the axon. And you don't see the axon actually because it is surrounded by the Schwann cell. It is supported by the Schwann cell. The Schwann cell cover it. The Schwann cover it like a protective covering, like a neurilemma. Right? If I make it bigger one, if I have the ability to make it, I'll show you. You know, this is a very long one. It is a very long thing, right? It's the longest cell in the body. You know, these are the Schwann cells. The Schwann cells. Understand? So you can only see at these nodes, axon can only be seen at these nodes, bachcho. All these green color cells, these are those neuroglial cells. You can see these are the endings. This is having these type of bulgings. The whole cell is called a neuron. These are called dendrites. This is main cell body, or called cyton, cell body or cyton or soma, also called soma. The nucleus, except the axon, there are small granules which can be seen, the granules, except in the axon. These granules are the clusters of ribosomes. These are called Nissl granules. Nissl's granules, clusters of ribosomes, so they help in protein synthesis. The beginning of the axon is known as axon hillock. This is called axon hillock. This is the point from where the action potential begins, and the action potential jump from one node to another node. The disturbance, the electrical disturbance, which I am calling the action potential, it is jumping from one node to another node and now ready to travel to another neuron. The other neuron may be excited or it may be inhibited. Little bit you are getting this idea, because in the detail we will discuss about all this in another chapter. This is, I am showing the nucleus of the Schwann cell. These cells are called Schwann cells. The arrows I am showing, these are the action potentials running. A nerve impulse has been received. For example, another neuron will be coming and terminating here. As a result of that, this may be excited or inhibited. A different potential has been generated here. Similarly, here also a different potential may be generated. This can be excitatory potential or inhibitory. Excitatory or inhibitory, it depends what type of neurotransmitter is transmitting. And depending upon all these, when the sum of all of them, the addition equals to the threshold potential, then from here, from this point, a nerve impulse has been generated, which is once when it is triggered, it will come to the end of the axon. So, bachcho, I'll tell you, this is the input zone. This axon hillock, this is the trigger zone. And this axon terminal, this is the output zone. Just understand this diagram. This complete thing, is the axon, also called fiber. The fiber word here is used for the axon. Axon or fiber. This cell is excitable cell. As I have shown, it is excited. And then only the action potential is traveling. And why it is excited? Because the sum of the potentials generated here in all these dendrites has equal to the action potential, the threshold potential. So in a bird's eye view, a neuron cell body, axon, another neuron. So this junction is called a synapse. This junction is called a synapse. Action potential run here, come to here, and then action potential will be transmitted. But in this cell body, you won't get that action potential. This can be excitatory, excitatory potential, or sometimes it can be inhibitory potential. For detail of this, we will discuss in the chapter of nervous system, bachcho. At the synapse, when the action potential is transmitted, it is not transmitted as action potential directly. On the neuronal cell body, many dendrites are there, which is the input zone. At the input zone, either excitatory potential is generated or an inhibitory potential is generated. At the input zone, the dendrites, either excitatory potential is generated or inhibitory potential is generated. Once again, you see this whole cell, input zone, either excitatory is generated or inhibitory is generated. When the sum of all these becomes equal to the threshold, then from here, from this point, a trigger like a bullet, the action potential is triggered, which is a nerve impulse traveling very fast, very swiftly, and come to the output zone. The axon terminal is the output zone, the dendrites is called the input zone, and axon hillock is called the trigger zone. Just remember 3 zones: input, output, trigger. Input, output, and trigger zone. Bachcho, I hope you understand. This is the sheath of tough connective tissue. On this page, we have explained to you the 3 types of muscle fibers. In today's class, we have done all that. I hope you have understood, bachcho. If any doubts are there, you can say to me. I will discuss those doubts. Meanwhile, I'm just taking the QR code. Everything is clear, bachcho. So meanwhile, I'll ask you some doubt. Which is a structurally syncytial? Which is a structurally syncytial muscle fiber? Skeletal, very good. Very good. Tell me. Very good. Skeletal muscle fibers are structurally syncytial muscle fibers. Which is a functionally syncytial? Which is a functionally syncytial muscle fiber? Functionally syncytial, cardiac muscle fiber. Okay, all my efforts are now over. I think I have done it. The neuron, the nervous tissue, just read the lines, because if we go in detail of action potential or any disturbance or any threshold potential, it will take a lot of time to explain you threshold and all that. But yes, last point of today's class, bachcho, in this diagram, action potential word you have heard a lot of time. Action potential is from where to where. Okay, I'll tell you. The word action potential you have used many times, but this word action potential only start here and ends here. After this, there is no action potential. Before this, there is no action potential. All this potential are graded potential of different grades. This is called graded potential. Action potential, which is a swiftly running potential, start from axon hillock and end at axon terminal. Action potential start at axon hillock and end at axon terminal. And with this, I complete today's class. All the very best, bachcho. I hope on the next turn we will start with the discussion of the question paper. We will start with the discussion of the question paper. Why can't we call skeletal muscle as functionally syncytial? Because we can see the syncytium in them. So they are very skeletal. They are skeletal. For example, if a person is very muscular, he already has a strength. So it is understood that it is functionally, it is function also. When the structure is there, when too many muscles are there, it is understood that that person is very powerful. But if we call that person as very powerful, when we don't see the muscles, but still due to some other factor, it can show the same effect. Right? So we can say he has got that functional ability. The structural ability is there. That's already with the skeletal. Okay, bachcho. Nissel granules, beta, they are the clusters of ribosomes, and you all know what ribosomes do. Ribosomes help in the synthesis of dash. And you know that dash means proteins. Absence of single unit contraction, that I don't know, beta. Yes, proteins. All the very best, bachcho. God bless you. Bye-bye. Take care. This is all from my side today. Okay, so another class is waiting.